On Saturday morning, Jake was standing in front of the mirror, straightening his tie. The small hall where the ceremony would soon begin was already filling with guests. It seemed to him that a year later, he should have forgotten that Madison's vacation trip, those nights that left a mark on his soul and memories. But the excitement in his stomach told him otherwise. He was holding up an invitation, a snow-white one with exquisite calligraphy. Madison and Liam invite you to the celebration. All year long, Jake tried not to think about the past, but when faced with the choice of whether to come or not, he couldn't resist. The feeling that drew him was a mixture of guilt, curiosity, and the same magnetic pull that he had once felt before. When he arrived at the place, the summer evening embraced him with a soft warmth. The huge mansion, decorated with lights, resembled a scene from a fairy tale. There were smiles everywhere, the rustle of dresses, the clink of glasses. Jake glanced quickly at the guests, his heart skipping a beat as he searched for their names. 3 women who changed his view of feelings and desires. Among the crowd, he spotted the first of them. Laura. Her dark hair fell in loose waves, framing her expressive face. She was wearing a scarlet dress that accentuated her passionate nature. She was standing at the bar, her fingers playing with a glass of wine. Her eyes were bright, as if she knew Jake had been looking for her for a long time. When their eyes met, her lips curved into a half-smile that was both challenging and playful. Her voice, deep and slightly mocking, rang out as soon as he got closer. "I didn't think you'd risk showing up. Did you miss me?" He noticed Ashley a little later, at the window of the house. Her blonde hair was pinned up casually, and the curls framed her delicate features, adding to her mystique. She stared out at the sunset as if lost in thought. She was wearing a dress of pale blue, light, almost airy, like her manners. When she turned to see Jake, her lips curved into a soft smile, and her eyes twinkled with something vaguely deep. "Jake," she said softly, as if tasting his name. "You're here again." Her voice was almost a whisper, but there was a warm mystery in it that promised more than could be understood at this moment. Madison was beaming in the center of the room. Her brown hair was pulled back in an elegant braid decorated with small white flowers. The snow-white dress emphasized her cheerful nature, and her smile seemed to light up everything around her. She spotted Jake first, waved at him, and to his surprise, ran forward. "Brother," she cried playfully, throwing her arms around his neck. There was a lightness in her voice, as if nothing had changed between them in a year. "I didn't expect you to come." "Liam will be happy to see you," she said, her eyes shining, but her gaze lingered a little longer, indicating that she hadn't forgotten the past either. The whole evening was a cocktail of emotions for Jake. He knew that anything that happened tonight could either dispel or complicate his past. And as Laura approached, her eyes burning and her voice sounding like a challenge, it became clear, this wedding will be remembered for a long time. The music changed its rhythm, flowing smoothly from melodic jazz to something more romantic. Jake stood in the corner of the room, a glass of champagne in his hand, and watched the animated guests. His eyes, like a magnet, kept returning to the 3 women, each of whom carried a piece of that year that he would never forget, no matter how hard he tried to remember. Laura was the first to arrive. Her scarlet dress stood out from the crowd like a beacon of fire. She gracefully approached, grabbing her glass from the bar and heading straight for Jake. Her gait was confident, her gaze searing. "So, last year's hero, are you ready for the next round?" Laura said it with the same ironic smile that had made his heart beat faster once. She set her glass down on a nearby table and leaned closer so that Jake could hear her over the din of the bar. "I remember that night. How are you?" Her voice wrapped around his mind like a silken ribbon. Jake inhaled, trying to keep his cool. "How can I forget?" he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. There was a glimmer of pleasure in her eyes. They talked for a while longer until Laura asked him to dance. When she pulled him closer, her arms wrapped around his neck were hot. Their movements matched the rhythm of the music, but Jake felt like they were both playing a game that only they knew the rules of. As the music slowed, Jake felt someone's gaze on him. Ashley was leaning a little to one side against a pillar, her blonde hair reflecting the flickering lights, a mysterious half-smile on her face. Laura noticed it, too. Her eyes narrowed, and she whispered softly, "It looks like someone wants to keep you company." "Go on, I won't disturb you." Jake froze, but Laura stepped back, leaving him alone in the middle of the dance floor. Ashley didn't wait for him to make the first move. She walked over to him, lightly adjusting her dress. "Laura can make a good impression, can't she?" she said, her voice soft but tinged with sarcasm. "You too," Jake replied, feeling a warm wave run through his body at the mere sight of her. Ashley smiled and held out her hand. "Do you dance or do you prefer to contemplate?" Her touch was different. She moved with grace, her steps light, almost airy. But despite her mystique, Jake sensed that there was more to her presence than just dancing. It was like the whisper of the wind, bringing with it memories of past nights and leaving a taste of the mystery of the past on your lips. After the dance, they went out on the terrace. The moon shone softly on their faces, and the air was filled with the fragrance of flowers. Ashley leaned against the railing and looked at Jake as if she could read his every thought. "You know, it's weird to be here again, with you. It's like a year has passed and nothing has changed," she said softly. Jake felt that her words had touched something deep inside him. He was about to say something when a loud laugh came from the audience. It was Madison. She flew out onto the terrace like a whirlwind, waving her glass and cheerfully exclaiming, "Well, what are you doing here? Hiding secrets?" Her brown hair glistened in the moonlight, and her smile lit up everything around her. "You don't change," Jake said, laughing. She winked at him as she came closer. "And you?" Her playful tone lightened the atmosphere, but Jake knew that this night was just beginning, and with it a new round of their tangled relationship. The evening gathered momentum. Guests were immersed in the fun, drinks flowed freely, and the light of garlands and candles gave a special magic to this place. But for Jake, every minute was filled not only with music and laughter, but also with intense anticipation. He felt like he was on the edge of something important. He stepped out onto the garden path, hoping to refresh himself a little. The night air was cool against his face, and he breathed in the scent of flowers, trying to focus. In the distance, the pool light flickered, and there were muffled voices of people around. Trying to escape the limelight, a familiar voice called from behind him. Laura was standing under the archway, her dark hair framing her face, a glass of champagne in her hands. She looked like the epitome of passion, mysterious, confident, alluring. Jake turned around, his heart pausing for a moment. Laura approached, her steps slow, almost predatory. "You always leave when things get interesting," she remarked with a small smile that was more than just a joke. She moved closer, her fingers gently brushing the lapel of his jacket. "Why don't you stay?" He could feel her presence filling everything around him, but before he could respond, Ashley's voice rang out in the distance, "Jake." She appeared on the path, her blonde hair reflecting the moonlight, her dress barely touching the ground, making her look almost ethereal. There was a mixture of surprise and determination in her eyes. Laura raised her eyebrows, a small smirk on her face.
"Ah,
"And our mysterious lady is here." "Well, I won't bother you," she snapped, stepping back with barely concealed defiance in her eyes. She slid back toward the house, leaving them alone. Ashley stepped closer, her movements graceful, but her eyes troubled. "You're always the center of attention, Jake," she said, stopping in front of him. "Are you all right? You look lost." Jake started to answer, but the words stuck in his throat. Her voice, her closeness, all brought back memories of those moments when her warm whisper was closer than the moonlight. "I just thought a lot," he finally said, feeling her gaze go deep into his soul. Ashley sighed, her hand on his shoulder. "You know that the past can't be changed. But maybe we can start over?" Her words sounded like an invitation, but there was a hint of something more behind them. Before he could say anything, Madison came running out of the house. "So there you are," her voice, bright and clear, seemed to break in on their private moment. She ran up to them, her brown hair flying and her eyes sparkling from the champagne she'd drunk. "I'm so glad you're both here." She put her arm around both of their shoulders, oblivious to the tension between them. Jake glanced at Madison, her smile dazzling and her playful gaze telling him that this was just a celebration for her. But he knew that this evening was much more than that. He found himself at the intersection of 3 roads, each leading to a completely different future. And each of them called him in their own way. The music in the house was getting louder, and the laughter of the guests and the clink of glasses provided a backdrop, but for Jake it all took a back seat. His thoughts swirled around the 3 women, each of whom was special to him. Laura, Ashley, Madison, each of them was a part of his past, and now they were all around him again, as if they were playing with his heart. Although he knew intellectually that today he was at his stepsister's wedding, and Madison was already owned by another man. And it has always been for him like an unattainable peak, from the point of view of established morals, laws, and established social norms. He understood with his mind, but his heart and his memories haunted him, stirring up his imagination and giving room for his romantic fantasies. However, with the other 2 girls, things were more likely to develop further. However, even here he was at a loss for choice, not wanting to lose more than one of them, and afraid to take a rash step forward. He went out onto the terrace, hoping to refresh himself a little. The night air was cool against his face, and he breathed in the scent of flowers, trying to find some clarity. Garland lights flickered in the distance, and there were muffled voices all around. "You always run away when things get interesting," a soft but confident voice said from behind him. It was Ashley. Her blonde hair reflected the moonlight, and there was a warm mystery in her eyes that always drew him in. She moved closer, her dress rustling slightly with each step. "You still haven't changed, Jake." "Trying to hide all the time." He smiled, but his stomach clenched. "Maybe I'm just trying to figure out where I belong," he said, trying to hold her gaze. Ashley moved to stand next to him, her hand lightly touching his arm. The touch was so familiar, and yet it stirred feelings in him that he tried to ignore. She looked up at him, her eyes bright with emotion. "I missed you," she said softly, her voice shaking like a whisper in the wind. "Year. This is too long." He felt her words sink into the very depths of his soul. His heart was beating faster, and before he could say anything, her face was so close that he could feel her breath. The moment lasted for an eternity before their lips met again. The kiss was gentle but passionate, like a storm that finally found its way out. He felt all his doubts and worries dissolve in this moment. Her arms wrapped around his neck, and he pulled her closer, as if he was afraid that this moment would disappear forever. He began to cover her lips and face with kisses, descending on her neck and greedily absorbing her scent, making his way to her exciting breasts. His lips brushed every nook and cranny of his skin, sending a shiver of pleasure through him. He could feel her body responding to his every touch, and she gave herself to him without question. So they stood, in the shade, away from the people celebrating and the wedding noise of fun. Their world was inside them, the rest of the world ceased to exist for them. They melted into each other as if they were one. But then, all of a sudden, they were interrupted by a conversation. "So, are you hiding secrets here?" A voice filled with irony rang out. It was Laura. She stood at the entrance to the terrace, her dark hair fluttering in the light breeze, her eyes alight with defiance. Ashley recoiled, her face pale. She gave Jake a disappointed look and said softly, "I don't know, I'd better go." Jake couldn't think of anything to say to her, and even as he gathered his thoughts, her footsteps faded into the darkness of the garden, leaving Jake and Laura alone. Laura approached, her movements confident and slightly mocking. "I wonder how long it's been since we were last alone like this." Her voice was filled with a hint of passion and defiance. Jake sighed, not knowing what to say next. But before he could answer, Laura moved closer, her fingers brushing his cheek. "You've always been so difficult. But you know, sometimes it makes you even more attractive." She reached for him, and her lips found his, hot, demanding. This kiss was different. There was so much fire in it that it made Jake's head spin. He felt torn apart. Each of the women aroused completely different emotions in him, but at this moment he gave himself up to the passion that Laura gave him. When she pulled away, her eyes glowed with triumph. "Do you understand now, Jake?" she whispered, smiling a little. But he couldn't answer. His heart was in turmoil, and his mind was caught up in a dizzying swirl of emotions. He stood between passion and tenderness, between fire and peace. And he didn't know which of these paths to choose. The mansion fell silent. The guests dispersed, the lights of the garlands dimmed, and the air was filled with the fragrance of flowers and the freshness of the night air. Jake sat on the edge of the terrace, looking up at the starry sky. His thoughts were muddled, and so were his feelings. Ashley and Laura. Tenderness and passion. Peace and storm. How can you choose when each of them was special to him? Footsteps behind him made him turn around. Laura and Ashley were standing together. Their images were like the epitome of opposites. Laura was bright and bold, her scarlet dress glowing like fire. Ashley was light and delicate, her blonde curls reflecting the moonlight. As they drew closer, Jake felt his insides freeze. "We talked," Ashley began, her voice soft but determined. Laura nodded, adding with a slight smile, "Don't think it was easy. But I think we're both tired of this game." Jake glanced at them, not sure what they were talking about. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to keep calm even though his heart was beating like a drum. Ashley glanced at Laura, who grinned and turned to Jake. You're standing here trying to figure out which one of us you need more. And we competed like two fools, thinking that you would make a choice. But the truth is," Ashley continued, her voice cracking, "neither of us are ready to let you go." Jake froze, not knowing what to say next. Laura took a step forward, her eyes shining like stars. "You can call it weird, you can call it anything. But we decided. You don't have to choose." The words came out of the blue to him. "I don't understand," he said, feeling his thoughts grow more confused. Laura moved closer, putting her hand on his shoulder. Her touch was steady, and so was her gaze. "You're important to both of us. And instead of sharing you, we decided to share." Ashley stood next to him, her eyes filled with the warmth of love. "I know it seems strange. But sometimes love does not fit into the usual framework. It's more than jealousy or possessiveness." Jake looked at them, feeling a mixture of joy, shock, and confusion inside him. "Are you sure? It won't be easy." Laura laughed, a warm but confident laugh. "When was it easy with you, Jake?" We both knew what we were getting into. Ashley leaned closer, her voice almost a whisper. "All we want is to be close to you. Together." They stood in silence for a moment, looking into each other's eyes. Jake could feel his heart beating with a vengeance. It wasn't the outcome he could have predicted, but perhaps that was what made it right. He couldn't choose, but he didn't want to lose any of them either. Jake felt a swirl of emotions swirl in his chest. All the year they'd been apart, he'd tried to convince himself that he'd done the right thing. But now, as he held the two of them together, he realized that nothing could compare to this moment. The room was filled with the sound of silence, which made more sense than any of the words. Ashley was the first to lift her face, her lips burning Jake with a light kiss. Then Laura gently brushed a lock of hair out of his face and followed suit. Their breaths mingled like the streams of two rivers, and time seemed to melt away. Every gesture, every movement was filled with passion and awe, as if they were afraid of losing this moment. Ashley rose on tiptoe, her lips soft and sweet as they found Jake in a long kiss, full of tenderness and promise. As she did so, Laura slid down like a shadow, her fingers sliding down Jake's shirt, loosening the buttons one by one. Her hands seemed to dance, barely touching, but leaving a feeling of warmth and awe in their wake. Ashley, sensing Laura's movement, smiled through the kiss, her fingers stroking Jake's back, finding the edges of the fabric. They moved slowly, almost solemnly, as if each gesture was a dedication, a revelation of their closeness that had finally been able to blossom after a long separation. Laura was at his waist, her gaze lingering on Jake's face as if asking permission. He nodded almost imperceptibly, but it was enough. Her movements were light and confident, like a melody she knew by heart. As she helped him out of his shirt, her hands, soft as petals, slid over his shoulders, removing the fabric and leaving only the touch of his fingers. Ashley leaned in closer, her lips barely brushing the skin of his neck, leaving a trail of warmth like the sun's rays. Laura wrapped her arms around his other side and ran her fingers through his hair, her breathing getting deeper, as if she was inhaling not just the air, but the very essence of this moment. "We've been waiting for this for so long," Ashley whispered, her voice soft and mesmerizing. "Let's not waste another second." Jake put his arm around them both, pulling them closer, and there was nothing superfluous in this closeness, only sincerity, only warmth. Their bodies were like jigsaw puzzles, finding their places, merging into a single picture, in which every movement, every look and every breath was part of the whole world. He completely obeyed this feminine element, allowing her to take control of him. Lying on his back, he caressed those slender, passionate bodies, barely visible in the dark. They moved slowly, as if stretching out the moments, allowing each feeling to unfold in its entirety. Laura was the first to let his ship enter her harbor, sitting on top of it, rocking it as if to the rhythm of the sea breaking slowly on the beach at night. Her hands slid over his chest and stomach, her fingers light as the whisper of the wind, tracing invisible lines in a love drawing. Ashley kept up with him, sliding her hands over his shoulders, their touch gentle, as if they were afraid to break the fragility of this moment, and her lips hungrily sought his lips, like a source of healing moisture in the desert. Jake could feel a subtle, almost palpable connection forming between them, like the fluttering of air between three hearts beating in unison. Their caresses were as natural as the tides, each gesture like a wave gently rolling in on the shore. The light of the sunset faded to a soft gloom, its golden glow playing on their skin, but for them, time stood still. The room was quiet except for their ragged breaths and the faint beat of their hearts, which filled the space like a soft but heartfelt melody. Their movements were unhurried, like dancing to music only they could hear. Each gesture spoke of love and affection that could not be broken by time or distance. This night was their moment of truth, where words no longer mattered, but only feelings expressed through touch allowed them to be completely sincere with each other. It was the beginning of a new chapter for them, where there was no room for past doubts, only mutual closeness, trust and the desire to be together, no matter what. Night had fallen over the mansion, hiding their figures in the soft darkness. The decision was made, and something completely new was waiting for them ahead. Unusual behavior. But maybe that was what love was all about, allowing yourself to go beyond what you're used to and find happiness where you least expect it.